see if you want. And we had been looking at the story of the Baal Peor. So let's remind ourselves of the text, what we have. Hold on, I'll move this over. Give me a second. Okay. So Moab, and Israel was stationed at Shittim, and the people by Yachel, they began, or they desecrated themselves by whoring to the Benot Moab, to the daughters of Moab, harlotry. And then those Benot Moab, those daughters of Moab, called to the people, to the sacrifice offerings of their gods, and the people ate of the sacrificial feast, and they prostrated themselves to their gods. And Israel attached itself to Baal Peor, either to the people who worshipped Baal Peor, or actually got into the idolatry themselves and enjoyed it, attached. And God was very angry at Israel. We spent time talking about what was involved here, how it happened, what is the Baal Peor, the decadent nature of the Peor worship, and how Israel, these people, came to do this. It was basically, as the Midrash reads it, it starts with the znut, and then it leads and it continues on to the avodah zarah. It starts with the sexual desire, and then turns into the idolatrous desire, just as the Torah forbids getting close to those other nations, because you'll if you marry amongst them, then they'll take you further. So it starts with the one and leads to the other. And according to the Midrash, this is and the sages, Baal Peor was the most decadent of modes of worship, involved defecating in front of an idol, and so this was really an unraveling of the whole kedusha experience that God had sought to create, and that Bilam seems to have lauded and applauded about us when he was offering those words up on the mountain. So the result of this, by the time you finish Pasuk Gimel, is Vayichar Af Hashem b'Yisrael. What is Charon Af? Charon Af. What's an Af in Hebrew?
Nose.
A nose. So Charon Af is actually basically a flared nostrils. Basically what you described, flared nostrils. Flared nostrils are someone who is ragingly angry, right? So to use that phrase, how you doing, Alan? Hashem, so God is enraged and wrathful towards Israel. We'll come back to saying, what does it mean to tell us that God is so enraged? But what God calls on now, by Yomer Adonai Moshe, Kachet Kol Rashi Ha'am, I want you to take all, my answer to Moshe, take all of the leaders of the people, V'hoka otam ladonai neged hashamesh. We'll identify this word more detailedly, but it means to impale them to God opposite the sun. V'yashov charon af Adonai miYisrael, and through doing that, God's anger to Israel will be turned back. So God is angry. What will stop God's anger? Doing this. Okay, that's what God says. And then Moshe interprets it to mean, by Yomer Moshe Shavtei Yisrael, Hirgu Isha Nashav Hanisadim Al Peor. Moshe says to the judges of Israel, everyone kill your men, the ones who have attached themselves to Baal Peor, because that's how Moshe interprets God's instructions. Okay, in the midst of that, that's when the story of Zimri happens, which we're not going to get to tonight. The story of Zimri, which would be there. Instead, Pinchas ends up killing Zimri, And at the end, God's wrath is sorry, we get to the end of it, but Teatzar Hamagefa from after Pinchas's act, but Teatzar Magefa Me'al Bnei Yisrael, the Magefa ceased from against Israel. And the number of people who died were 24,000 in the plague. So by telling us there was a Magefa, what do we understand about Vayichar Af Hashem B'Yisrael? That God was angry or wrathful against Israel. What does that mean?
You mean, is it like getting at the depth of anger or the breadth of the issue?
If when the Torah tells us God was angry, we're supposed to understand that God's anger is not just he's storming around in the godly chamber and saying, I'm really mad, I'm really mad, I'm really mad. What does it mean God is angry?
So I guess he's he's wreaking
he starts a magefa. There's a plague. God being angry means that a magefa, a plague has moved through the camp of Israel. And God says, what will stop the magefa and pull my anger back? You people judging the participants. Eventually, Pinchas's act will play the role to accomplish that, but that's what is laid out for us here. Okay, so let's go back to what I asked before. What does it mean to say kachet kol rashei ha'am? Take all the heads of the people and hoka otam la Hashem. Hoka. Well, let's take a look at that text for a minute and see what hoka involves. Let's just look at it for a second. This is the Gemara in Sanhedrin. Okay, Dan, you want to read this for us? I highlighted it.
Rav Chisda says, for where is it derived that Haka'ah is hanging? Hoka'ah is hanging, where the Gibeonites requested to be given Saul's sons, as is written, Veheku anum.
Hoka anum, yeah. Okay.
Huka anum onto the Lord in Gibeah
Of Shaul, Givat Shaul, yeah.
Oh, Givat Shaul, the chosen of the land.
Of the Lord. Okay, so
Lord.
That doesn't help us much. This quote a pasuk that is without you have to translate the pasuk too. But let's just take a look quickly at what happens in that story. So this is the request made of David, and it's an uncomfortable story. The Gibeonites want revenge against Shaul. Okay, thereupon they said to the king.
Thereupon they said unto the king, the man who massacred us and planned to exterminate us, so that we should not survive in all the territory of Israel, let 7 of his male issue be handed over to us, and we will impale the Lord.
Okay. At Givat Shaul.
At Givat Shaul, the chosen of the Lord.
Go on.
And the king replied, I will do so. The king spared Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, son of Shaul, because of the oath before the Lord between the two, between David and Jonathan, son of Saul.
So David had taken an oath of loyalty and friendship towards Jonathan. So he will spare Jonathan's child in terms of this awful deal he has to make with them. And we're not going to look at the whole storyline, right? But instead he gives them, we have a list of the other people he gives them, and handed over to the Gibeonites. And then we're told, V'hokanum, let's read it in Hebrew, by Yokium, Bahar, Lifnei Hashem. And they did this to them on the har before God. And all 7 of them died. They fell. So that is falling here obviously means that they died, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about for a second what we sometimes refer to as hanging, because you'll see that sometimes the word tliya. Rashi for a second use the word tliya. But hoka he tliya. And Kemosh Matzinu b'nei Shaul. Hokam means tliya, which means hanging. And it quotes the text here. So when we talk about hanging, let's stop that thing for a second. What the, now we're going to get graphic and uncomfortable for us. What do we think these days when we talk about hanging?
Punishment?
Yeah, but what is it? Just tell me what it is.
So they're literally being hung and asphyxiated, right? Versus impaled with a
So you
sword.
take right. So tliya is that you have a rope around a neck, and it's either asphyxiation or you break the neck.
Right, break your neck, right?
That a person's own weight, when you kick out the stand beneath him, his own weight kills him in a matter of seconds or a minute, presumably, either because of asphyxiation or whatever else happens there, right? So that is tliya. In Hebrew, they actually don't refer to it. They refer to like many of the Zionist fighters who were arrested by the British and were going to be hanged is the right word. The term that's used, they call it Olei Hagardom. The people who go up to the Gardom, which was this contraption, which you were hung by. So Rashi uses the word tliya. I don't know if that's what he means. If you take a look at the Sifrei, let's go back there for a second. I got to share the screen again. Hold on a second. The Sifrei says, "V'hayu solvim et chataim keneged hashamish." Solvim. What is it, Slav? Have you heard that phrase before? Yeah, a Slav is the Matzat Slav is actually the word we use for crusaders. Okay, and a Slav is a cross. Specifically,
So they're being crucified.
It's meant to conjure up crucifixion. Now, crucifixion. Yeah. So let's think for a second about that beautiful place. What do they call that artist area? It hasn't been very popular in recent years. But there's a big amphitheater also outside of the old city walls, right? That area there, right? Solomon's something.
Solomon's Pool?
No, it's not Solomon's Pool, right?
You mean Moshe?
That's a name, okay? But it's lovely.
You mean Moshe?
It's across from Yamin Moshe. Yamin Moshe is already in the hill above that valley. It's in the valley that the art area is, but we should understand that valley, especially move further down, is the place where in ancient times Moloch worship involved in child sacrifice took place. Moloch child sacrifice, and in Roman times, that was the preferred place for crucifixions. And so it was a mass crucifixion area, that valley, where they're now going to actually, the plan is that Israel wants to run a cable car across from where the train station is and the first station now. It's going to cross that valley and over to outside the old city walls by Ir David. And so they're going to have a big post in that space, which is pretty much empty at the bottom of the valley. There's some olive trees or whatever there. And some people say it's a burial grounds. I don't know what's actually an official burial grounds, but we know it's a place of a lot of death. What is the rabbinic name of that place? The biblical name of that place? So I think it's biblical name, right? It's named
Gehinom.
Gay Ben Hinnom or Gehinom, and that we associate with hell because of what took place there. Okay, so what was the act of crucifying? What did it entail?
You're hung on a cross and I guess left to bleed.
Yeah, you're hung, not with not Velcro, right? You're nailed to a cross. You're bleeding, slowly bleeding to death. Birds come and eat your flesh as you are dying there, and it is a horrible, horrifying experience. So is that what we're supposed to imagine is happening here? Wow, maybe that is what the Gibeonite seems to have done to the children of Shaul in a horrible agreement that David made with them, who needed to make with them. So,
Well, is this say that the crucifixion predates the Romans and this was like a much older?
Yes.
impalement does, right? Maybe the Romans got, were smart enough mathematically to really, all it needs is 2 pieces of wood. It's perfect, right? So I don't know if they used the cross, or they had other ways in which they would do something which was horrifying like this, right? So tell me, is impalement or crucifixion a one of the official execution methods of the Beit Din? No. Skila, Sreifa, Hereg, and Chenek. None of them is this. So is this, an extra juridical thing? In this case, I want you to do that. Maybe. But we do know, and this will bring us back to Rashi's choice of Tliyah, is that there was, that the Torah does discuss, if a certain person is executed, that they would take him and they would hang his body up for all to see, so that the execution happened in the usual means of execution, and after that there was a display. The Torah has a rule that, anybody remember what the Torah's rule is about display of dead bodies, hanging them that way?
You got to take them down by nightfall.
Has to be taken down by nightfall. Has to be taken.
Why?
But the Torah says, "Ki kilat Elohim," or "Kilat Hashem talui." It is a curse of God. It is a desecration of God for someone to remain hanging that way. So there is, and so it has to be buried. And we actually have that as a that's where we learn some more halachot about immediate burial from that discussion about execution, and how quickly, it must be, execution and public display, that it also be done by the end of the day. Also because, of course, the body would be rotting, and to have a rotting body is in and of itself, this is a mix of experience. Why do you display the body of someone who's been executed? Why?
It's a warning to others.
Yeah, it's a warning to others, a cautionary moment, right? And it's up against, on the one, that goal you want to achieve, at the same time saying that this body is still in the image of God, and we can't let it be desecrated. So this middle ground is a few hours, yes and not. So it could be when the Torah says "V'hokanum l'fnei Hashem neged hashemesh," would mean something like that. I want you to impale them before the sun, meaning that it has to happen only when the sun is up. Now, there's a variation on this here in the Gemara Sanhedrin. Hold on a second. That actually says, against the sun. Hold on a second. Alex, you want to read this for us, please?
Mishnah teaches, in cases of capital law, the court judges during the daytime and concludes the deliberations and issues the ruling, deliberations and issues the ruling in the daytime. The Gemara asks, from where are these matters derived? Rav Shimi bar Chia says the verse states with regard to Israelites who worship the idol of Peor in the wilderness and hang hokah them unto the Lord facing the sun, indicating that capital cases are judged in the face of the sun, i.e. during the day.
So that is the expression of how it all happens in the daytime, punish them in the daytime, and if it's hanging them or whatever, it's all during the day. Okay, now let's go back and ask the question, who is it that is supposed to be impaled, crucified, hung this way? So the Torah said, let's go back to that phrase in the Torah. Hold on. Kach et kol rashei ha'am, v'hokah otam laHashem. Take all the heads of the people and impale them to God before the sun. And that's what will have God stop being angry. When you read this text, what does it sound like?
Well, I guess who's doing this, right? Who's actually taking these people and
Well, who are the people that are being hung?
well, the heads of, I don't know, the leaders.
The heads of the people. The heads of the people, you hang the heads of the people, and then I will stop being angry, God says. That's the straight reading of the text. So then I ask the question, why do take the heads of the people? Who should you take?
The people who committed the, the acts.
By Samed Yisrael Baal Peor, and Israel attached itself to Baal Peor. So the people that attach themselves to Baal Peor are the ones that you should be doing this to. So yeah, that's a good question. Now, let's say with the possibilities. Rashi Ha'am. We spent a little time last time talking about the difference, although this is a giveaway, this line here it hurts a little bit. The difference between Yisrael and Ha'am. Vayachal Ha'am. Vatikren La'am. Vayochal Ha'am. The actions happen all on the part of the Am. Now, in so doing, maybe Israel ended up being attached to Baal Peor because of the actions of Ha'am. That's one way to read this. Ha'am specifically refers to is it all of Israel?
Perpetrators.
The perpetrators, right? It is a subset of people, is one way to read this, a subset of people who give in, go astray in all the ways we looked at it. So Rashi Ha'am, if we just stay narrowly with this, are to eagerly lead the others into this activity. They are ringleaders. That's actually how the JPS chooses to translate it. And it's an interesting translation. But take all the ringleaders and have them publicly impaled. So yeah, I want the people who are on the short list here. I could think of it a little differently. Variation number one is that there's a raid on the brothel, and the police bring out, right? Everybody is brought out, and there's a peep walk, and a bunch of people have hoods over their heads. A bunch have their raincoats over their heads. Why?
To hide their identities.
But yeah, because they're actually people who otherwise have led respectable lives, right? And the blotter the next day will give you the list of the, unless they're paid off, right? Which is the other possibility, right? Of the supposedly leaderly people who are involved in this naughty behavior. So it's possible that Rashi Ha'am means actually people that have been chashuva people who have shamed themselves and shamed God and shamed Israel, and God wants them brought out. So that's variation number two. Variation number three is that that it has to do with moral leadership that has terribly failed. Let's take a look at this interpretation. Hold on. This is Rav Yehudan. Okay, let's read Rav Yehudan. Mick, you want to read it for us? Take all the heads.
Take all the heads of the people and impale them before the Lord in the sun. Rabbi Yehudan said he hanged the heads of the people because they had not protested about the people.
People are behaving badly, and you are a leader. What's your job?
Did he hang them or impale them?
We're back with we already did that work. right? We don't know exactly what's going to go with this open-ended question mark, right? But why then you're the moral leaders and you have stood by and not stepped up when you were needed to step up. And so God says, punish them. Now, that's not how most Mefarshim read this. We'll start with the Sifrei. Kach et kol Rashi ha'am dayanim v'hiyu tzolvim et chataim k'neged hashemesh. Go gather up the judges, and they will hang, impale, crucify the sinners, which is in the old little lesson about a pronoun whose antecedent reference is unclear. Take all the heads of the people and hang them right before God. Who? Let's look at the pasuk again.
Interesting.
So is the them the Rashi Ha'am, or is the them Otam the previous pasuk describing the Israel who involved in Baal Peor, right? That made God angry. So Rav Yudin says Otam means the immediate previous phrase, the leaders, whereas the Sifrei and all the others are going to say Otam means these guys. And what are you taking the heads of the people for? To be part of the solution, and the punishment, the punishing, and not to be punished themselves. Okay, so let's see how this plays out. Rashi says the same thing. And the people to judge those who worship Peor. Okay, now. So let's actually read how the Bechor Shor plays with it. Mick, you want to read it? Yep. Take all the heads of the people and hang them.
Take all the heads of the people and hang them. This is not to be understood as a command to kill the leaders of the people by hanging. It meant that the leaders of the people should convict the guilty people, those who had worshipped Baal Peor, of the death penalty. This is what Onkelos meant when translated the judge those guilty of death and execute them. He did not translate kill the leaders of the people. We find that during this episode of the Golden Calf, Moses also told the judges of the people to kill each his men. And the judges of the people mentioned that there were identical with the people here described as Rashi Ha'am, the leaders of the people. Although the Torah does not report that this command was carried out, the fact that God commanded Moses and he in turn commanded the judges make it plausible to assume that these orders were carried out. Alternatively, they did not have a chance to complete their assignment before Pinchas killed Zimri without the benefit of a trial. Pinchas' deed arrested the spread of the pestilence.
Okay, so it's not clear, do they actually get to do it or not? The Torah doesn't describe it, but that's what we're supposed to either presume it happened or it wasn't necessary. Let's take a look at this other read. Right, this is the other line of it. To do it neged Hashemesh, says the Seforno, right? As we've sort of established, is the role of sometimes of bringing the body up. This the people would observe the execution of the idolaters, and by not protesting their punishment, we would achieve atonement. This would help them achieve atonement for having sinned by not protesting the sinner's conduct beforehand and before. Okay, let's just go to here and read the other rendering, which is so. Alex, you want to read it? Nehemiah said.
Nehemiah said he did not hang them, the heads of the people. Rather, the Holy One, blessed be he, said to Moses, appoint Sanhedrin heads for them and let them judge whoever went to Peor. He said to him, but who will make such a one known?
Okay, pause right here. Right, God says, I want you to punish all those who are involved in Baal Peor. Remember how the Gemara imagined where these events took place? Anybody remember? At the marketplace discussion, what happened? How to lay it out for us? We don't remember.
I don't recall.
so that they would have that there was a marketplace, and the Jews were looking for to have some new fabrics because they haven't had anything at all, and the old lady would be on the outside,
Oh yeah.
and then this attractive
Right.
young woman on the inside. And so where did the Baal Peor worship happen? One stall,
And
and the next stall, and the next stall, and they did it. And then what happens? They gather themselves and they put their clothes back on and they dust themselves off and they slip out the back of whatever, and they try to, I don't know, try to intermingle again with the rest of the Israelites. So that, what problem does Moshe say he has?
doesn't know who is guilty.
How am I going to do this? How am I going to punish them? And one of the versions of it says, there are no witnesses. There are no witnesses. This really is not, we can't use the usual methods of trial. So what am I supposed to do? He says to God. So this is it's a really creative reading of the text. Anybody listen to my daily dose of Torah today?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, two of you did. And so Rabbeinu Hananel ponders the possibility that the Bnei Yisrael did not see the sun or the moon for 40 years, right? Because they had the cloud that was there to protect them from the harshness of the sun, and so they never saw the sun. Really was always sort of, fuzzy. Now, admittedly, Aaron has died already, so we're going to see the problem with that, but let's presume that cloud is still there for them. So what does God do? The Holy One, blessed be He.
The Holy One, blessed be He, said to him, I will expose them. In the case of whoever has gone astray, the cloud shall be peeled back from upon him, and the sun shall shine upon him in the midst of the congregation. Then they will know anyone who has gone astray and hang him.
So let's stop right there. So what happens? Moses is supposed to know who the people are. God says,
So you
they will
gotta,
be illuminated.
there'll be a spotlight on them, right? Wherever they go, there'll be a spotlight on them. Can you imagine you're standing out there, Moses, I don't know who these people are. And then suddenly you see a ray of sun here and 4 people over there. And he tries to move around and the sunlight moves with them and they can't escape it. It's a great reading of the text. And that's what it means, Neged Hashemesh, Neged Hashemesh, right there in front of everybody. Okay, so that is the instruction. And Moshe then goes on to say, all right, I'll carry it out. Oops, 1 second. What just happened here? Pardon me. So back to the pasuk. Yomer Moshe el Shoftei Yisrael. Moshe says to the judges of Israel, Hirgu ish anashav hanitzmadim leVaal Peor. Let every man kill his people who attach themselves to Baal Peor. That seems to support which reading? That the elders, that the Roshei Ha'am are the ones to be punished, or the Otam refers to the people who attach to Baal Peor? Seemingly, the second is supported by this pasuk. That's how Moshe interprets what God says. He turns to the Shoftim, to the judges, and says, each one of you kill your people. What does it mean, your people? What is the Shoftim formula that's set up in Parshat Yitro? Where are the judges positioned? Thanks to Yitro's insistence. Is Moshe the lone judge? No. The only federal judges? The answer is no. What's the primary judging system?
The 70 elders.
That would be right. So
the ones that Yitro tells him to put into place.
Yeah, right. But in the end, it's going to be set up as a tribal-based courts, and so Ish Anashav means every tribe deal with this. Every tribe's got to deal with this. That's what I'm calling upon you to do. Do your job now. Now, is there a pressure? there is a tremendous pressure, because if we read it correctly, that by Yicharaf Hashem, that God's anger is wrath is kindled, means that a plague began. There's a tremendous pressure to do this immediately because people are dying, whatever the plague means. Who's dying? We should clarify. Who's dying?
So
Remember where?
the
Sounds like it is an undefined plague. Everybody is being put into danger because of the culprits. Why everybody? So you could go back to the statement, because everybody should have stopped their neighbors from going to those booths and those stalls. But everyone has some culpability, but they're not the primary guilty ones. So if you punish the primary guilty ones, then God said, I won't go after everybody. So that's the pressure that's here. And it's in this context that Zimri steps forward, and then Pinchas will deal with him. We're going to actually stop here. And I'm thinking that we could do the Zimri story next week, but I might pause and do some Haggadah with you. I'm going to make a decision about that. And we'll actually pick this up with both the Zimri piece and the Pinchas piece right after Pesach. So I got to make the decision, but that's very possible. So we'll remember where we were, and then we'll go on from there. Okay, that sound good?
sounds
Very
good.
much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Shkoyach, everybody. Shkoyach.
Yeah.
See you
Thank you.
soon.
Everyone. Good
Thank
night,
you
good
so
night.
much.
Bye.
Bye.